Can you beat the Pikmin 4 demo without Pikmin? As someone who plays Pikmin, you might have wondered if it's possible. In this video, I'm going to answer just that. To start things off, let's lay down the rules. No using Pikmin. That's the only rule. We start things off with the Olimar section. This requires the collection of 5 red Pikmin in order to progress. From there though, I tossed them aside and headed towards my destiny. On the ramp towards Sonic the Hedgehog, I picked up a blue Pikmin, but tossed him aside as well, as, again, this is a no Pikmin run. And as soon as I hit Sonic for the first time, I knew that I had made a mistake in deciding to go through with this. A simple 10-second fight turned into an eternal ordeal where Moss and Olimar battled for what seemed to be an eternity. We came out victorious in the end, but I knew this was just a taste of what was to come. To prepare myself for the perils ahead, I had made my character as Oatchi as possible, which essentially means I tried to make myself yellow, but orange was the closest thing, so I did that. I landed on the planet and discovered Oatchi. He was so happy and filled with hope, but little did he know what I was about to put him through. Saving the first 2 crew members goes by smoothly and we reach the landing site. This is where the real challenge begins though. Picking up the stabbing device is easy, but the Game Boy was too heavy for Oatchi, so the solution was obvious. Ram into it as many times as possible until you can get it to the ship. Took a couple hours, but Oatchi finally got it there. Only to my surprise, Nintendo had accounted for my stupidity. The treasure would not be collected if you weren't able to pick it up. I attempted to get the bell as well, but there was no way of getting Oatchi up there. Even when I directly sent him towards the bell, he wouldn't glitch up and pull it down. Here I thought the run would end, and to be honest, it kinda does. This is as far as you can get without Pikmin. But I couldn't end it here. I had to continue for the sake of the challenge. I decided I would allow myself to use the minimum amount of Pikmin possible in order to get past this point. Using Oatchi, I gathered 7 Pikmin. And then, using those 7 Pikmin plus Oatchi, I picked up the console. Then I used the Pikmin to bring down the bell into Oatchi's range. Naturally, I did the logical thing and proceeded to ram Oatchi into it as many times as it took to get it to the ship. Then I used 2 Pikmin plus Oatchi to pick up the device. This ended the first day. On the second day, I made it into what is the actual game, I guess you could say. At this point, I'd tell you to wish me luck, but I knew that wouldn't save me and Oatchi from the hardships we were about to go through. Like any good traveler, the first thing we did was attack the first thing we saw in sight. And I sent Oatchi to go pick up raw material. At this point, I realized how annoying it was going to be to wait for Oatchi to pick up raw material. We broke the first wall and were introduced to the first cave. This one needs ice Pikmin, so I avoided it. The only other accessible cave with small Oatchi is the Crackling Cauldron. The problem with this cave is you also can't progress without electricity resistance, so this was a failure as well. I decided to farm raw material until the second day so Oatchi could be bigger, because he grows on the third day, right? Wrong. On the third day, Oatchi was still small. It turns out Oatchi won't grow until you get the first crew member saved. So I reluctantly went in and helped the ice Pikmin. Against the challenge, I had to use an ice Pikmin in order to freeze the jello. But once that happens, the rest of the demo can be completed without the use of any Pikmin. With the cave explored, the next order of business was to drown Oatchi, since everyone knows the best way to teach someone how to swim is to drown them. I spent the rest of the day doing nothing while I watched Oatchi do all the work and collecting raw materials. The raw material would be essential in this quest as I needed it to get the hazard resistances. On the third day, Oatchi finally hit his growth spurt, and I upgraded his carrying amount. In order to collect out-of-reach treasures, I had to use Oatchi's rush ability to knock them down. The thing is, with the amount of times I had bashed Oatchi's head against these hard surfaces, I was convinced I was either giving him head trauma, or his skull was as thick as mine, making him as stubborn as me. I continued to collect all the treasures possible in this cave without the use of Pikmin, and then I left. For the following day, I upgraded Oatchi to 10 strength, and went back into the last Frost Cavern with an upgraded Oatchi in order to pick up the treasures that I couldn't get before. At this point, I had essentially exhausted the only caves that could be partly completed without Pikmin. So I kept farming more raw material. My useless captain just stood around there stretching while I waited for Oatchi. Then I picked up a baseball the following day, and I decided to go into this cave. You can actually collect this treasure here, without Pikmin, just using Oatchi's rush ability, getting it out of the water, and then moving it with Oatchi once it's out of the water. I noticed my captain stretching underneath the water while I was waiting. This was pretty cool, so I take back what I said about him being useless, since this totally makes up for that. To my surprise, I also learned that your captain can swim. If you call him over with Oatchi, he swims towards you with a vengeance. It's actually quite terrifying. Anyways, I built this wall up for some reason, as if it would allow me to progress further through this cave, but you can't. You need Pikmin. So it means I ended up wasting a large chunk of the raw material that I had been collecting since the first day, but I still stand by this being a solid choice. Being unable to collect anything else, I farm raw material for the rest of the day. At this point, I needed either fire or electric resistance in order to progress. So, I needed that 100 raw material. I'll also point out that you can leave caves and keep the treasures. So it's not like Pikmin 2 where if you back out, you don't get to keep the treasure. The next day was literally just Oatchi collecting 22 raw material. Yes, took the entire day to collect 22 raw material. I mean, Oatchi worked the entire day and I did absolutely nothing, so that gave me time to do other things like subscribe to Invisaron. I do have to say, good boy, Oatchi. I'll also mention that some raw material can't be collected without the use of Pikmin because of these dumb conveyor belts. With 100 raw material, I was able to upgrade Oatchi and give him shock resistance. The shock of me not using any Pikmin still affected him, but at least now electricity wouldn't. I could now charge in and collect treasures behind the electric gates. I assisted Oatchi in getting treasures past enemy lines and getting closer to our goal of 1,500 Sparklium. The castaways in both of these caves couldn't be knocked down with Oatchi, so I had to leave them behind. With a lack of fire resistance, I also couldn't collect everything. Only 30 Sparklium away from success, I went to try and get the remaining treasures on the surface that I could with a 10 strength Oatchi and no Pikmin. These buttons here were my only hope. I bullied a Bulborb in order to get the landing site open, and after collecting both buttons, I was left with 1,490 Sparklium. As if by some cruel act of God, I had no treasures left and I still needed 1,500 Sparklium. At this point, I had two options. I could farm more raw material, and over the course of the next 4 days get fire resistance, and then deal damage to fire hazards and collect more items. Or I could collect the corpses of my fallen foes and sell them on the black market for easy cash. I opted for the ethical approach, and proceeded to collect the corpses. As if by some miracle, there was exactly enough to get 1,500 Sparklium in this cave, so I avoided the Pikmin, collected the treasures, and left the cave. With the remaining time, I proceeded to collect more raw material until the day ended. I would need this to get fire resistance in the future. So, is it possible to beat the demo without Pikmin? Yes, but also no. You can obviously get a better score by unlocking fire resistance. You might also be able to win the Danduri fight against Tomato Olimar without Pikmin, thus saving another castaway and getting another upgrade for Oatchi, but this is good enough for now. I'll be sure to make a video like this for the entire game. Until next time.